let's just line our pans with some parchment paper to get started. Just get these trimmed to size. All right, let's get on with it. In today's video, I'm going to be making some classic buttermilk biscuits. Now, I am not a baker and I rarely bake. In fact, I don't even know that I've ever made buttermilk biscuits before. I've certainly made Bisquick, so I think I'm competent enough to handle this. But think of this more as trying this along with me. I'm going to need a biscuit for a cooking video that I'm doing. And so I thought, why not try whipping some up, and we can do that together. Got a scale here to weigh out some flour. And normally, I'm pretty fussy about what recipe I'm going to use, or very specific concept of what it should be and why I'm doing that recipe, and doing supplementary research just to make sure I have the full picture for what I'm trying to do. Here, I just went with a simple recipe off the web. I've mentioned it before. This is not sponsored, but King Arthur Flour has a very nice recipe archive. Recipes that just seem to work very well, not a lot of fussiness, and an easy to use website. So rather than stress about which YouTube video to listen to for the flakiest MFing biscuits possible, and you won't believe how fluffy and light and tall and flaky these biscuits are. We're just gonna keep it simple. Simple recipe, more complex levels of cynicism. I'm gonna weigh out my flour. Got this scale I've zeroed out with my bowl on here, just to make it easy to do. I'm aiming for 360 grams. So let's go ahead and get it away from this infernal US system. Literally holds back progress. And get ourselves measuring in grams. think we're going to need a fresh bag of flour, so I'm kind of going to go for it here. Well, we might just exactly get there. $361 grams. Probably gonna have to start over. Alright, now we're gonna need some salt. There's a tiny bit of sugar and a leavening agent, which will be baking powder in this case. We'll move the scale out of the way because I'm just gonna measure these the old-fashioned way with measuring spoons. We have a teaspoon of salt, a tablespoon of sugar, and we'll need a tablespoon of baking powder, go ahead and level that off. Pretty simple stuff. Just go ahead and mix this together. Alright, and now we're going to need some butter. Now, in the past when I've made doughs, I've just used butter knives. I mean, literally, they were designed for the job. Look at their name. To cut up the butter into pieces. Recently, a very smart person told me you can use one of these pastry knives to do the same job, which is pretty extraordinary. I would have never known. But I'm going to try a trick I have seen people suggest. And so here we're gonna, go with the internet. And we're gonna try grating up some butter. Seems like a very smart way to get butter into small pieces that we'll need to mix in with the flour. So I'm gonna do that now. I've got my butter here. We're gonna need about 6 tablespoons. So I'm gonna grate this stick basically until I'm grating my thumb. And then that should be about 6 tablespoons. This is some sarcastic biscuit making today. This has been in the freezer for a little bit to make it solid enough that it should be able to grate. Let's give it a shot. So far, so good. Just about there. I'd say that seems to work pretty well, actually. Let's have a look. Okay, perfect. I could throw that right on some pizza dough and we'd be golden. So I'm gonna toss this in with the flour so we can get the butter incorporated into our mix here. Just gonna stir that around a bit to distribute it. Cool, that seems like a pretty nifty idea. I am going to use my pastry knife. Just take care of a couple of the larger clumps that formed. So kind of get a more even granulation in our mix here. Excellent. And now we're going to add our buttermilk. I'm going to do a cup of cold buttermilk. All right, let's get our cup poured out here. And I'm not going to pour in all of it, just most of it, so we get a sense of how the dough comes together and not drown it in buttermilk. You know, one thing about the butter mix that I appreciate about the website that I used, you know, I was being a bit snarky about YouTube, but obviously people use hype to drive views, but hype often covers over actual information. And the recipe I'm looking at, you know, provided some nice simple statements about, you know, using cold butter, it gets like a more flaky, higher rising biscuit versus warmer butter, some more even, smaller crumb. You know, just little details of clear presentation of details and how that might affect your recipe. So I really appreciate that. Just gonna start mixing this in. You don't want to work it too much. Just get stuff incorporated here. Have some flour at hand. We're going to turn this out onto the counter here. Give it a touch more to help it come together. Okay, so we've got it to come together. Just gonna get it quickly into kind of a flat rectangle. I'm gonna fold it and then roll it out again. Alright, I rolled this out. I'm just going to use biscuit cutter to cut out some rounds. I'll put it on our parchment here. We've got 6 biscuits here. Take my scraps to get a few more. I'm gonna do this pan a little bit thicker. Nice classic biscuit there. This can go onto our tray. Another guy here. Perfect. Squeeze one more out of here. All right. Turn this into one last biscuit. I've worked this quite a bit now, so probably won't be ideal. Alright, so I'm gonna put these in the fridge while the oven preheats, just to help get them chilled back down. I'm gonna be preheating to 425 degrees. Alright, the oven is hot. It's ready to go. One last quick step. I'm gonna brush the top of these with milk, which will aid in browning. I know some people like to do some melted butter on top, but we'll go simple. And I know these biscuits are maybe not the most perfect looking creations. Not exactly the perfect biscuits that an influencer would want to see on their channel. But as I said, that's not really what we're doing here. We're just going for it. We have these thinner ones, probably rolled out too thin. I expect those will come out kind of dense. And partly I'm talking about this. Kind of let you in on kind of my experience and methodology of it. The recipe said to roll out to 3/4 inch thick. However, were I to do that, we would have gotten about 4 biscuits. And it indicates the yield is 12, so that suggested it needed to be rolled out thinner. I think I took that too far. Should have just lived with having fewer biscuits, but with less kind of pressure and working of the dough to get there. So my sense was that they should be thicker, but sort of competing against that. So that's some inexperience, you know. I almost made a barbed comment about this is why I don't bake, but that would be sort of against the spirit of the channel because, of course, if you don't do something often, you can't expect to be very good at it. We don't just instantly become good at things. It does take work and practice, and baking isn't an area where I have applied myself, so sure I could get better. I had better luck with some other things, but also the chickens aren't hatched, so let's put them in the oven and see how they actually turn out. Right, they've been chilling, they've got their milk top. Let's go into the oven. Okay, baking time is about 15 to 20 minutes, so we'll keep an eye on those and see how we do. Okay, let's have a look at our end result here. Kind of turned out, I think, as we predicted. These thinner ones, stayed pretty thin. Got some rise here on these thicker ones. This weirdo that we kind of just mashed together, kind of separated more. I look at this really as a science experiment of making different shapes and thicknesses of biscuits to see what happens. To say they smell really good and they're quite hot, but I think we should try cracking one open just to see how it tastes. Right. Look in there. Let's give it a taste here. To say it's pretty delicious. It's thinner, but it's not overly dense when you eat it. Pretty tasty, and I think these are going to work just fine for what I have in mind for our other recipe. So I hope you've enjoyed going on this journey with me, attempting to make biscuits without a whole lot of experience or practice. One of the amazing things about YouTube is you could go on and watch pros do this and have a lot better feel for it than just reading a recipe. Normally I would do that. I didn't in this case. Kind of just going off the info we had. Still got a good biscuit, but no doubt we could do better with these in the future. Anyway, as I said, I hope you enjoyed kind of going through the process with me. And I'm excited to make the final dish, which I'm going to use some of these biscuits for. And hopefully I'll see you next time for that one. Have a good night.